Dean Martin was more than a spotlight and a tuxedo. He was the very definition of a golden age miracle, the effortless king of cool, whose velvet voice painted smoky nightclubs and silver screen westerns alike with timeless style. Audiences believed his laid-back grin was born flawless, that the man behind the microphone never knew a tremor of doubt. But behind every perfectly pitched lyric and every martini-raised wink lay a life scarred by rejection, heartbreak, and an unrelenting search for the simple warmth of home. He arrived in this world as Dino Crocetti, the son of Italian immigrants eking out a life in brutal hard Steubenville, Ohio. At 5 he stumbled into a schoolyard where his accent marked him as prey. Cruel laughter echoed down dingy hallways. His name sounded foreign on American tongues. Young Dino fled into silence, but when words failed, music beckoned. He drummed on windowsills, tapped out rhythms that drowned the sting of mockery and whispered a promise. One day the world would listen. By 16 a steel mill's roar replaced the school bell. Dino's days were measured in blistered hands and soot-blackened lungs. At night he climbed into boxing rings, earning defeat after defeat but learning how to rise. When fists no longer fed the family, he slid behind a blackjack table in speakeasies, trading cards and reading men's eyes like open books. There, in the haze of cigar smoke, he perfected his greatest survival skill: charm. In 1940 he dared to sing in public, borrowing Perry Como's dulcet tones under the name Dino Martini. Instead of applause he met icy indifference. They sneered at his accent, yawned through his songs, and forced him off stage in humiliation deeper than any punch he'd taken in the ring. It was Sammy Watkins who whispered, "Call yourself Dean Martin," hoping a sleeker name could smooth the old wounds. Yet even under that fresh veneer, silence greeted him. At 27 he walked away convinced he was destined only to fade into shadows. Then came the fateful night in 1945 when a young comic named Jerry Lewis stumbled onto Dean's set at New York's Glass Hat Club. Lewis's manic improvisations collided with Martin's smooth melodies, turning potential disaster into pure magic. The audience erupted, and two struggling men forged one of show business's most electrifying duos. For the first time Dean Martin belonged to the spotlight, but that glow carried its own pain. Night after night, critics praised Jerry's clowning while whispering that Dean's only talent was playing the stoic straight man. When their partnership finally splintered in 1956 at the Copacabana, Martin faced the world alone and, for a moment, bereft of confidence. His first solo film, 10,000 Bedrooms, flopped so badly that he confessed it felt like the ghosts of every childhood failure all at once. Yet Dean was wired for comebacks. In 1958 he stood toe-to-toe with Marlon Brando in The Young Lions and stunned Hollywood. He reclaimed his voice with Volare, but it was 1964's Everybody Loves Somebody, knocking the Beatles from the top spot, that proved his legend would endure. Alongside Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. and Joey Bishop, he formed the Rat Pack, turning Sinatra's Vegas into Dean's playground. But the easiest laugh often disguised the deepest ache. When The Dean Martin Show premiered in 1965, viewers saw a genial, slightly tipsy host who never rehearsed, never broke character. They assumed every slurred anecdote, every wink to the camera was unscripted reality. Few realized that his glass was often filled with apple juice, and that the mask he wore each night kept the true Dean safely hidden. As fame soared, rumors of addiction and whispers of loneliness grew. He once admitted privately, "The man they laugh with on TV isn't the man I see in my mirror." When you consider how Dean survived childhood scorn, boxing rings, career crucibles and a decade-long duo that bristled with unspoken resentment, what do you think was his greatest triumph? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. Behind the scenes, Dean's personal life tumbled through heartbreak after heartbreak. In 1941 he married Elizabeth Betty MacDonald, a shy brunette who loved Dino the unknown singer more than Dean the rising star. Their rented apartment years were humble, filled with scraped-together meals and dreams of a family he would someday lead. For children, Craig, Claudia, Gail and Diana filled their home with laughter, but as the spotlight gleamed brighter, Betty dimmed. By 1949, when Dean and Jerry conquered Hollywood's nightclubs, Betty found herself eclipsed and alone. In a society unaccustomed to fathers gaining full custody, Dean walked away from his first wife with the children in tow. It was both victory and wound. He gained his children but lost the woman who first believed in him. Betty's health declined, her name all but forgotten when she died in 1989. Within months of that divorce, Dean wed Jean Beager, a former beauty queen whose grace steadied him through the Rat Pack years and TV triumph. They had 3 more children, Dean, Paul, Richie and Gina, and for nearly a quarter-century Hollywood saw them as the perfect couple. Yet the demands of stardom carved cracks no on-stage smile could hide. Jean watched the man she married at 32 morph into a legend claimed by millions. By 1973, after 24 years together, their marriage quietly unraveled. It wasn't a dramatic public scandal but a private surrender. 2 people who once loved deeply falling out of step under the relentless weight of celebrity. Hope flickered again in the mid-1970s when Dean married Kathy Hahn, a Beverly Hills salon receptionist almost 30 years his junior. He adopted her daughter Sasha and for a brief moment tasted the simplicity of domestic peace. But his father of 7 routines clashed with her desire for normalcy. Within 3 years the marriage ended, yet his devotion to Sasha endured. Proof that, despite his failures, Dean's greatest role remained dad. No loss cut deeper than the day his eldest son of his second marriage, Captain Dean Paul Martin, vanished in the skies above the San Bernardino Mountains in March 1987. Tall, athletic, multi-talented and pilot of an F-4C Phantom jet, Dean Paul embodied every promise his father had once dared to dream. When his plane disappeared in a sudden desert storm, Dean's face aged decades in an instant. For 3 days, Reagan ordered satellites to search, friends prayed, psychologists consulted psychics. No miracle came. At 35, Dean Paul was gone, and his death shattered both Martin parents into an unrecognizable grief. Frank Sinatra coaxed Dean back on stage for a Rat Pack reunion tour, hoping cheers might revive his spark, but Martin performed with a hollow gaze and slipped away after one show in New York, unable to sustain the ruse of joy. He retreated from public life, trading tapings for golf courses and living rooms filled with old westerns. In 1993, lung cancer, an occupational hazard for a man who'd chain-smoked since boyhood, emerged uninvited. Dean refused surgery. "I just want peace," he told his children, choosing dignity over desperation. His Beverly Hills home, once alive with music and company, fell into hushed shadows. Daughter Diana became his steady companion, singing "Everybody Loves Somebody" softly at his side as black and white cowboys galloped across the TV screen. Those private concerts became sacred farewells. On Christmas morning 1995, surrounded by only his closest family, Dean Martin drew his last breath. Diana's trembling rendition of his anthem filled the room with both grief and grace. At 78, the King of Cool slipped into silence. Vegas dimmed its neon lights for 3 haunting days, honoring the man who had defined its golden era. Yet Dean's story did not end in that hush. He left behind an estate of nearly $30 million, 2 cherished homes, and far more importantly, a family trust he established to protect his legacy and royalties for his children. In 2023, Iconic Artists Group inked a landmark partnership to preserve his music and shows for streaming, merchandising, and new generations hungry for his style. His daughter Deanna tours the world, telling stories between verses and keeping her father's warmth alive. Each year in Steubenville, Ohio, the Dean Martin Festival awards scholarships in his name, turning the boy who once dropped out of school into a beacon for creative youth. Dean Martin's true fortune was never in real estate or record sales. It lives in that timeless proof that everyone can be somebody's somebody, that a gentle laugh can outshine loneliness and that love, like music, can outlast even death. Though he slipped into eternity nearly 30 years ago, his presence endures in every vintage martini toast, every western still spinning on DVD, and every heart that finds comfort in his voice. If his songs have ever moved you, if his style has ever made you dream, honor him below. Leave a message or share your memories. Let's ensure the King of Cool truly never leaves us.